It really means a lot for people to show up. It really does. And not everyone values that. I value it, and so it really means a lot to me for everyone that came today. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And for every person here that has taken time to support my book. I know that I send a lot of messages, and you see it flashing up on social media a lot. That's part of book marketing. But it really means a lot. Just all of my friends and family that have been there for me and just helped push the message out. It takes a long time to write a book. It's like a 3-year process. And at the end of the day, you're like, okay. And someone's like, I read it in one day. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, that's good and bad. You're like, okay, great. It's a good, you can read it quickly. But then you're like, 3 years of my life and you got through it in one day. That's amazing. So anyway, all that to say, and then just thank you for letting me be vulnerable. And I know it's weird sometimes. I'm sharing all this really personal stuff, but I appreciate all the support and just hearing the story, sharing the story, and we'll see what, I don't know, I sent you some questions, we'll see how it goes.
I usually go off script.
Right, that's totally fine. She's a true professional, and yes, and this is my friend Sarah Holzapfel. She is also helping me out with some local stuff, and she's got me on a few TV things going on this week and next month as well. Mm-hmm. So that's been awesome. And I met Sarah through my sister Lindsay, who's not here, but she would be if she could, but she's in North Carolina. So anyway, Sarah's gonna do this, and then if anybody has questions afterwards, I'll be happy to take them, but totally get it if you don't, because you all know me pretty well, so.
Well, and on a personal note, yes, I know you from Lindsay and we've met and become friends, but you've been instrumental in my sobriety journey. So I hope that I have expressed that to you enough. So I'm really honored to be here today to talk to you about this. I've loved the book. I've read others that you've written, and this is my favorite so far. Thank you for having me.
And you can follow Sarah at Booze Free Birdie. Right?
Booze Free Birdie, yes.
She just opened that Instagram account, so
inspired by you. Okay, so for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Freely Sober and what compelled you to write the book in the first place.
Yeah, well, having been a writer for quite some time, I knew that I'm trying to decide if I should I look at you?
No, you can look.
Should I look
around?
You guys
don't have to look at me.
Okay.
Look at that.
So when I was writing Reason to Return, which there's copies of that there. I was kind of going through this whole thing about quitting drinking, and you guys know I write about everything, and so I started writing about it, and in 2022 I got to write this big essay for the New York Times, and that was sort of like the clincher for me, where I was like, okay, this really has resonance, people are really interested in this topic, and I feel like it could be something more. At the same time, I'm like walking through my journey. I think I was about 15 months sober at that time, and I just felt this is the next thing. That's how it's felt with all 3 books. Just felt like God being like, well, this is the next thing. Just keep walking forward, never knowing that I'm going to get a book deal, never knowing how it's going to work out. But I'm just like doing the things that you're supposed to do and seeing what happens. And I'm not by any means a Colleen Hoover or that other guy that lives in Indianapolis, what's his name? John Green. I'm not John Green. I'm not any of those people, so I'm not like selling a million books, but there is something that keeps happening that I get these book deals, and it's not because of me. So I have to believe that it's because of a message that matters and that people need to hear.
Well, you also have, just a unique story, and obviously one that resonates with people because it's a topic that a lot of people are talking about and thinking about, but you're also just very good at writing about it in a way that makes sense. So I don't think you should discredit that part of your abilities. Why Freely Sober? Why did you come up with that title?
Yeah,
Did you come up with the title? Sorry,
yeah,
and also, do you come up with the title while you're writing, or I'm interested in the process? Is it like you're on page 76 and you're like, this is the name of it, or do you come up with it before or at the end?
Yeah, totally open to book questions too if anybody has those. You always have to come up with the title in the book proposal stage, so even though you probably know it's not going to stay that. So the original title was Grace in the Glass, and that was just sort of a placeholder. I liked it, but it was a placeholder. I didn't think it would go, stay. And then, sorry, my son is dancing in the
Real life.
He's a goofball. He's a goofball. So probably halfway through the process, the editorial team comes back to you and they're like, here's what we're thinking. They do like this whole strategy session with the whole team. You're not in it for some reason. You're not a part of it. I don't know why. Book publishers are weird. And then they came up with like 3 or 4, and I remember I didn't love what they came up with. And so we hit around a couple of things until we came up with Freely Sober, which I really liked because I just was like, I like the idea of freely sober because it's not like something you have to do. It's not like something you need to do to be a good Christian or something. It's like something that I got to that point once I realized that I was choosing it because I wanted to choose it and not because I was compelled to choose it. And it was because I learned more and I knew more and I understood more about the substance and then about me as a person. And I recognized like, I'm choosing this freely, and that's the only way for me to get through this. And I think a lot of people feel forced into it, and that's part of their problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought you chose it because, to me, sobriety feels so freeing, and so
well, that too.
So there's
that's
two.
a great point.
Well, it's interesting that there's 2 terms for it, but that's why I really love the title of the book. So I do think people think, oh, you're sober. That's awful. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sober is an interesting term because people, like, I didn't even know if I wanted to use it in the title because I was like, I don't want people to be like, think they have to be sober to read this or that I want them to get sober, that's the goal. But it's also like, you want people to immediately know kind of what the book's about when it's out there in the public. So that's kind of what we went with, but I think I do a pretty clear job of saying you don't have to call yourself an alcoholic, you don't have to call yourself anything. I would say the term that I resonated most with is probably self-medicating. I've been the example being like, when I have a headache, I take a Tylenol. When I was feeling stressed, anxious, whatever, I was drinking wine. And so that's the term. I don't call myself an alcoholic. It's like labels are weird and people are weird about them, so it doesn't have to be one thing or another.
Yeah. So when in your journey with alcohol did you start feeling like, this doesn't feel neutral anymore? This feels like I'm dependent on a substance and I don't like that feeling?
Well, it always felt a little unhealthy, even just like in college, which college is like licensed to binge drink. So a lot of people, I think, have like kind of start their initial problems in college. I really do. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really feel totally like a dependence probably until maybe my late 20s, like into career life, where it was just like, it just began to be like a daily thing. And then really it wasn't into motherhood. It was like everything shifted to where it's like, you're not going out and doing stuff, but it's like, you're doing it at home, and then like, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And then it just starts to feel like a compulsion of like, I feel like I need this to get through the night, or I need this to get through the day. And it just made me very uncomfortable, especially the times when I would overdo it. And I was like, I knew in my mind, I felt like I heard God say, like, one day you're going to quit drinking, or you're going to need to quit drinking. And I was like, it was just like this far off thought, like,
not today, though.
Yeah, not today. Like, okay, like down the road. But honestly, the thing that really, I would say this is like one of the most powerful things for me, was just me going, do you really want to be dealing with this when you're 75? Like, do you want to be writing this prayer down in your journal when you're 75? Like, that scared me. I was like, I don't. Like, I don't want to live like that. So yeah, that was one of the things that, sorry guys, I realized when we started this, I was like, people that walk in are going to feel really awkward. I'll be like, hi, welcome.
So at what point then, or I guess when looking back, when you heard that prayer, you decided to make the decision to quit drinking, what was like a lie that you felt like society was telling you about alcohol that was the hardest to undo? And maybe also, what sort of about a lie that you maybe were telling yourself about your relationship with alcohol, or the person you were when you were drinking?
Well, I think it's so silly looking back, thinking about all the ways I was like justifying it. But it's just like, yeah, it's normal. Like, everybody drinks every day. Like, everybody drinks at 5 o'clock. Everybody does that. That's fine. It's needed. No, it was just like the dumbest justifications for doing what I was doing. And then I had situations where, like, I had a doctor tell me, like, if you're stressed, you should have a drink. Or society and ads telling you like, just you deserve this. And so I don't know that I actually believed those things, but I wanted to believe those things. And so I just chose to believe them and believe that I was normal. But so many things like learning about the fact that how connected it is to cancer and how we're seeing that more and more, like that was one thing off of my mind where I was like, well, I don't want to increase my chances of cancer. I mean, that's one good reason not to do it. And then over here, it was like, oh, well, my grandpa died of liver disease, and my mother-in-law had severe addiction and alcohol problems. So it's in our blood. Like my husband and I do not have a good gene pool going for this addiction thing, and I do not want my kids dealing with this. And yet, we still drink at home sometimes. And so that as well was part of the decision-making process. And plus we would there was probably more arguing and fighting and just like not being as attentive and present. There's so many things.
And I guess then, what would you tell yourself? What was a lie you were telling yourself? Like, I guess, was there something you were telling yourself when you were drinking that now that you don't drink anymore, you were like, no, that was alcohol talking. That wasn't actually true.
Well, one thing I told myself is like, well, you have a good job and you get up early and you exercise and you drink a lot of water and you eat healthy and you go to church and all these other parts of your life are really good. And so like, do you really need to change this? But it was just like an oppressive thought, a thing that was constantly on my mind that was keeping me from growing as a person, growing spiritually, and really dealing with some of the inner like root issues to why I would choose to drink, like just avoiding all of that. And that's what most people do, because it's not really about the drink, of course. It's a root issue, it's a spiritual issue, and if you're not dealing with it, like it never heals and you never move past it.
Right. What were you afraid you would lose if you stopped drinking, if anything?
Well, I mean, one thing is fun, It's like, I have a lot of great memories, of vacations and concerts and all those things. I was like, how can you, and I'll tell you, being in the rooms with people, the Zoom rooms for me, because this is mostly COVID, people are like, going to their first anything for not drinking is such a big deal. It's like my first wedding, my first concert, it feels overwhelming. Because everybody knows, like, well, I can't take a break from drinking until after the cruise, until after New Year's Eve. I'll stop after New Year's Eve, but obviously I have to drink on, for the concert. And people do that all the time. And so it's really scary to do those first things. And I know, was it Suzanne, what was her book was going to be called? So there's this woman named Suzanne Ware, and she has a book called what is her book called? The Sober Mom Life?
The Sober Shift.
The Sober Shift. And she talks all about the sober firsts.
Yeah.
And like, it is really kind of overwhelming. It sounds silly, but it's like, you're like, how am I going to handle this? And so some of that was part of it. I was like, am I ever going to have fun again? Yeah. Because even though there was a ton of bad moments, there's also a ton of good moments. But what I realized is that so much of our lives in this country and are layered and integrated with alcohol that we don't even know what was fun and what wasn't. And we think it was all the alcohol, but it actually wasn't. A lot of times it was the people. It was this situations we were in. But we have never taken the alcohol away to know, could we actually have a good time without it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you probably don't remember this, but when I first quit drinking, I remember I stopped drinking in December of 23, and I reached out to you and said, I'm getting ready to go to a Christmas party. How awkward are the first 20 minutes going to be? And you were like, kind of awkward. Like, they will be. Like, be a little uncomfortable maybe for the first 20 minutes without the social implication of alcohol.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is you realize, like, even the first 20 minutes with alcohol can be awkward. Mm-hmm. But it's honestly, after those first 20 minutes, like, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
You got to get over the hump. But people never give them a chance to do that, give themselves a chance to do that. They just immediately are like, well, I have to have this. And never know that, oh, actually, I don't have to have a headache tomorrow.
Right. So what was the tipping point for you, or the turning point, I guess I should say, when you started to feel like this was less of white knuckling, giving up alcohol, and now I'm free of this substance, and I truly feel like this is a better life, and I'm so happy I'm living it?
Well, so I quit drinking for like 6 months, and then, so that felt kind of free, but then towards the end of that, what I remember what happened is I was at my parents' house, And I was like in the basement, and the refrigerator's like always got stuff in it, and I was alone, and I just was like, I'm just gonna like have this wine cooler real quick, and nobody's gonna know. And I did, and nobody knew, and I didn't tell anybody. But it felt really great, just on an empty stomach, and I was like, I'm not gonna, but like once I did that, and then it was COVID, and it was like, well, okay, this is going downhill fast. But by the end of the summer, like I did kind of like, I started out fine where I wasn't drinking that much, and I was like, oh, I can handle this. Then by the end of the summer, it was like just back to what it was. Then I was like, okay, all right, pause, okay, sober September, okay, like I'm doing sober September, you know?
Yeah.
And just doing 30 days, and then that's when I joined an online group, it's called The Luckiest Club. Started going to meetings every day, realizing that you actually don't have to be a weirdo to go to meetings. Like there's like all kinds of normal people there, just like me. I was like dentists, doctors, teachers, lawyers, stay-at-home moms, like all these people. And I was like, oh, so like you don't have to be like this person that's totally ruining their life to go to these meetings. And it was being there and going to those meetings every day where I saw, like I was just like, it was just like motivating that all these other people were trying to do it. And then they'd have testimonies that people would share. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to like, be like, I want a year. And so anyway, I started to get my eye on 90 days because somebody had said, you gotta get to 90 days before you feel like you're not white knuckling it and you really understand what it feels like. And so I was like, all right, 90 days. And so once I got to 90 days, I was like, all right, 6 months. And then I had my eye on a year. And the closer I got to the year, I was like, okay, I now have to make a year. You know, it just, and then getting to a year was a little weird because I was like, well, now what? My big goal, like I made it. But after that, everything started to go faster. The first year was very slow. And now it's like, holy crap, life is flying by. I cannot handle this. So it gets easier. It always gets easier as time goes on. And you just don't, it's out of your brain. Yeah. Like you're just not thinking about it. Like when you're drinking, you train your brain to think you need it, that your body wants it. It's an addictive substance. When you take it out of your system, your body like forgets that it exists. And you don't think about it. So
that's such a great way of putting it. And I think that's a really important message about the fact that you went for, did you say 60 days and then regret? Like you went.
I did 6 months.
6 months
initially,
and then had that wine cooler. Like
that's the wine cooler.
That's it. So that's not. And I think that people look at that sometimes and say like, I failed. I went 6 months and I failed. But I don't think it's failure. It's a data point that you went 6 months, you had the wine cooler, and then decided actually that wasn't good and I want to go back to it. And so I think that the trial and error is really normal.
Yeah, the trial and error is totally normal. I mean, you can't expect, there are people that do it, you know, but it is more common to screw up and have to start over. And all of that progress you make in those days that you don't drink or you're making better choices, like all of that matters to your personal growth and development. And like you said, data point, that was always the thing early on in the Luckiest Club that that they emphasized was, how about we just get curious about it instead of judging ourselves for it? How about we just be like, oh, I wonder where that happened. Let's take a look at that. And so instead of like shaming yourself, you're like, oh, I was really hungry and like upset that day, and like I let myself get in that moment. And then you start to see the patterns and understand things instead of just running away and like wishing you were a different kind of person.
Yeah. So speaking of being different, how is your daily routine different now than it was when alcohol was part of your life?
My daily routine isn't much different because I'm still just working on my mom and all of that, but it's like I'm not thinking about how I can get my hands on wine tonight because I didn't let myself really keep a lot of alcohol in the house because I knew I would drink it. So I was always being like, I gotta go to Target, I'll be right back. Like I gotta pick up something for the baby, and then like, of course I'm gonna go to hit the wine aisle. So there was a lot of just like planning around that to get it, but then also like not keeping in the house so that like I wasn't, I actually had to make the decision. That's a lot of mental energy right there. So I'm not doing that. I'm not weighing the cons, and it's like, I don't know why, but on Fridays and Saturdays it was like, well, it's Friday and Saturday. Like I feel like I should probably drink, right? And so I would do that all the time. And then it's weird if you, or at least for me, like if I were to overdrink on Friday night, like by myself, it's really not the same as having fun at a concert with your friend and drinking. Like
the hangover feels the same.
The hangover feels the same, but it's like you're always trying to reach this wonderful feeling that you had that one time, and then you can't get there, and then it's disappointing, and you're like, well, why did I do that? And then I'm like binge eating nachos, and that's another horrible idea. So yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I do still eat too much ice cream, but that's,
well, that's good.
That's better. That's better than too much wine.
So for people who haven't read the book or are taking a happy home tonight, what if you could say like one thing I want you to take away from this book is?
I probably should have played this answer. One thing I want you to take.
You can say two.
Okay. Well, okay. So this is the promise. When you're writing a book, they say make a promise to the reader. And so one of the big promise I wanted to make to the reader in the beginning was, by the end of this book, you'll never think about alcohol in the same way again. And so it's not to say by the end of this book, you'll want to quit drinking and you'll never drink again. But like you'll know things that you didn't know, and maybe you'll think about it a little differently. The goal is not for everyone to be sober. The goal is to think intentionally about alcohol and why you're using it and how you're using it, and decide if you want to keep doing that. And also just like take a history of your own sort of, your own history with it. Looking at in a financial book, for example, they'll have you do a financial history, like, well, how did your parents talk about money? And like, what did you think about money when you were this and that? It's like, we should do the same thing with alcohol, because you might like locate some root patterns that you didn't realize were there. And you may be one of those people that's like, I've never thought about this and I don't really care about alcohol, I could take or leave it, and that's wonderful if you can do that, and I wish that was me. But it's not, and a lot of people, there are degrees, it's a spectrum. And so just like challenge yourself to investigate a little bit, and depending on where you are, like maybe you'll walk away knowing something that you can't unknow, and for that reason you'll make new decisions.
And one of the things I really like about the way you structured the book is that you have like personal reflection time in it, which is kind of a nice add-on that people can read a chapter and then maybe think about, reflect on what they thought about it.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I would just say is that it really is one of those things where like if you try to do it on your own, like I tried to do for a really long time, like just constant like the personal willpower and the actions and all of that, it doesn't work. Like you really have to surrender something and let God in to help you walk forward. And I know that's like very vague to hear, and sometimes you're like, well, what does that look like and what does that mean? And all I can say is like you have to experience it, and you have to lay it down and try to do it before you can really know how that feels. And for me, that was it. And over time I was able to get there.
So what would you say to the version of yourself that was like white knuckling it, that did have the wine cooler at 6 months, who obviously never thought this was possible, and here you are writing books about it? What would you say to her?
Probably just like you'll get there. Like you'll get there. Keep walking forward. I said the other day that I found these old journals of mine up in the attic when I was getting Christmas stuff out from 2014. It's like all these prayers about like, God, please help me with this drinking thing. Like, please help me find freedom from this. And I said, all of it matters. Like the faithfulness matters. The choice to keep walking forward matters. And I think, though I didn't feel it at the time, I really believe God honored those prayers, and He honored that action to keep striving is not the best word, but like continue trying. And like even though I wasn't getting it, like I was still looking toward it with hope, and He heard those prayers, and it was really cool to look back and be like, wow, those prayers have been answered, and it didn't feel like they could be at the time. So.
Well, I can say as just someone who you've helped, I'm so glad they were answered, and I'm so glad you've used your gifts and your platform to talk about this, because it is helping people. And now I'm going to cry. And I'm making fun of the Kleenexes. So thank you for letting me be part of your journey, and thank you for letting all of us be part of your journey. Do you want to open it up to questions from the audience?
If anybody has any, like I don't want to be weird, so we can talk about book stuff too if anybody has any questions about that. But if not,
has writing about it brought up anything for you that, like, have you had to go back and reflect, or has this brought up any trauma? Sounds dramatic, but yeah, like has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at how I had this eating disorder as a teenager for many years, and how it kind of morphed into it's doesn't seem like the same thing, but a lot of the feelings are the same. And so it was interesting to go back and be like, what were the feelings like that kind of ignited that, like from when I was 13 and 14 to why I'm doing it in adulthood? Like they're different, but like related. And so it's like, yeah, what didn't I kind of get healed as a teenager? And so I'm still working on some of that. There, you know, there was a lot of stuff that came up when I quit drinking in 2020. I realized there were two other big things in my life that I have now been sort of working through since then, that I had been kind of burying for a really long time. And so I didn't even recognize that until later, where I was like, oh, wow, I didn't actually start working on these two things until I got alcohol out of the way, so it was clearly burying something. So there's stuff you may not realize you're going to uncover. Yeah.
Good question.
Did you notice when you made the choice to stop drinking how it affected other people around you?
Yeah, I mean, I was always the one bringing alcohol into my house. So my husband like never buys alcohol. So he really stopped drinking too, because it was always me, like, you know, and so he hardly ever drinks, and I think that's much better for our relationship and much better for our parenting. So that's been wonderful. You know, outside of that, it was pretty kind of like close to the vest. Like nobody really knew that I was like having that issue. It was mostly at home. So otherwise, no, outside of like, hey, I might be in a better mood, you know, at the work meeting or whatever. So yeah. Anything else?
Did you talk about it at work?
No.
Okay.
People that work with me just like see stuff on social media and they're like, oh, good job. I'm like, now you know. People that meet me, like when they're like, someone knew like a mom at school and we're like new Facebook friends, and like all of a sudden they're like, I've been following you on social media. I'm like, yes, you know a lot about me now. I'm like, nice to meet you. But I'm an open book. That's just sort of how I am. And I guess it works for me. I guess that's the vision that God gave me.
So is Grace in a Glass coming? Is
No.
Grace
Well,
in a Glass? Grace?
If this book like sells well, which I don't know, it might. It's doing okay. I may get another book deal. So I don't know what that book would be. So we'll see. Only God knows. So, all right, I guess we're gonna close it up. And thank you guys for being here. You don't have to leave. I have a few books over here for sale. I didn't get enough of them, so if you don't have one yet and you want to get one, just like scan the QR code that's literally everywhere around this room and buy it off Amazon. And but otherwise, I do have a few copies if you need to take one today. Happy to sign any, and then I have copies of my other books to return. I didn't have enough copies of Leaving Cloud 9 to bring, unfortunately. So that's it. Thank you.